North American sports fans are familiar with the story that inspired the film We Are Marshall. Most soccer fans are familiar with the story of Manchester United's legendary Busby Babes. A year ago, BBC aired a gripping film telling the story surrounding the 1958 Munich air crash. And now, the film titled United is available in the U.S. The movie, based on the true events, the true story of the Busby Babes, still the youngest side ever to win the league, and the tragic 1958 Munich air crash that claimed 8 players from their squad. The film draws on first-hand interviews and with the survivors and their families to tell the inspirational story of a team and community overcoming terrible tragedy. The film stars Dougray Scott as Sir Matt Busby, Dave Tennant as his assistant, Jimmy Murphy, and Jack O'Connell as Bobby Charlton. The film is directed by James Strong, who also directed Doctor Who and Torchwood. Here's a clip from United.
Every bloody time we prove them wrong, so with respect, sir, it can be done, it will be done, I'll make sure of it.
You're letting your grief dictate your actions.
Of course we are, what else have we
There's
got?
no virtue letting the...
Grief's a fuel now.
It is not practical.
Right. Let me speak, man.
I know those lads better than anyone. I found them. I nurtured them. I stood with them morning, noon and night through pissing rain and gales and snow. They let me mould their lives from the ground up, and they repaid me. They repaid this club with their skill and their passion, and now their lives.
Jimmy, we all want to honour the memory of those who died.
No, it's not about their memory. It's about showing who we are to the world. Showing we'll not be bowed by tragedy. Because how we are in the future will be founded on how we behave today.
I'm putting out the team and you'll have to manhandle me from this building before I stop.
Looks amazing. We now have the pleasure of speaking with the film's director, James Strong. James, as you know, football or soccer is still in its ascendancy in the U.S., and the story of the Busby Babes and the Munich air disaster may not be familiar to many Americans. How are you expecting the movie to be received in the U.S.?
Well, I think we always felt that it was a universal story, and that, and you know, because of a football audience, and I finally thought, that will it appeal to an American audience? And actually, we hope that, for the response that we've had already from people who've seen it and stuff, and actually managed to get hold of a copy from, in America, from the British release and stuff. It's been a phenomenal response to the film, from a US audience and stuff, and actually amazed how many parallels they've found from sort of similar stories of port, like We Are Marshall was a reference people mentioned as a film that was a kind of another film about a team that came back from a tragedy and stuff. So the universal aspects of the story, I think, appeal to people beyond an interest in football or soccer. It's about a football team, but also it's about a group of individuals, they're human beings who sort of suffer a tragedy. So in our story, they're footballers, but they could be, when we were making the film, the Chilean miners were kind of being rescued, and there was a lot of resonance with that, and with our soldiers in the war in Afghanistan. So there's a sort of resonance of young men and involved in sort of tragic circumstances, which I think is a kind of universal and repeating feeling, I think. So I think it's, but we're all, as filmmakers, we're all delighted that the film is getting as wide an audience as possible, so to get a US release is thrilling.
As I mentioned off the top, this is a BBC film, and there was no official or direct involvement of Manchester United Football Club in the making of this film. Was that a problem at all? And were you ever concerned about telling a story that is so indelibly woven into the fabric and history of the club?
As a BBC film, there's a certain sort of independence that the filmmakers need to have, so therefore, not having the cooperation of the club, it was never really asked for, because it was an independent production and stuff. But again, you have to be incredibly diligent in your research to make sure you're portraying real people. So therefore, you can't take any liberties, or you can't to make sure you don't get anything wrong and stuff. And like I said, the first people we showed the film to were the families and survivors of the tragedy. And we also interviewed the survivors and these family members before as part of the script writing process to make sure we got as much of it right as possible. But it was very important to, show these people the film first, because it was their lives you're kind of portraying and stuff. So that was incredibly important to sort of involve as many people as we could in it, so they didn't feel it was something being done, without their consent or without their permission and stuff. And there's lots of people with extended families and stuff, but we had a packed house, and the overwhelming response was really, really positive. And so that's meant those 300 people, if you like, meant more than the millions of people who watched it when it went out on BBC television.
James, it's over 50 years since the tragedy in Munich, and since then Manchester United has gone on to become one of the biggest sporting brands in the world. How relevant is this story today, given the current state of European soccer, and what are you hoping that audiences, American or otherwise, will take from the film?
Footballers nowadays in Britain get paid hundreds of thousands of pounds and are multimillionaires and are kind of treated like pop stars, rock stars, and they're feted and earn millions. And this was a group of guys who had no money, and they went. They weren't famous. They went and lived among the fans, and they lived among the people, and so weren't celebrities. So it's a completely different era. So I think that's also what the film touches on, how much the game's changed, if you like, how the money involved now is you can't even imagine what those people would be earning now and stuff. So it's almost a snapshot of a very particular time in British social history as well. So I think the story lives on. Hopefully our take on it is the definitive one. I think it's a film ultimately about human beings and how in the face of the most tragic circumstances the human spirit will endure. And I think that sort of universal theme is something which I think will appeal to everybody. So I just would love as many people to watch and also to kind of understand this sort of perhaps slightly untold piece of British history, which I think is will be surprising and moving to hopefully a huge American audience. So I'd love you all to watch it and enjoy our film.
I'm sure most everyone will. James Strong, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today. United, the DVD is available in stores now and on demand on all major cable providers, as well as on iTunes and Amazon.com. Coming up next, a look at the Asian Champions League action. Al Ittihad look to keep their run alive.